The forest smelled different that night. Sharper, more alive with secrets. Pine needles crunched beneath my worn boots as I followed the narrow path deeper into the darkness. The October air bit at my cheeks, carrying whispers I couldn't quite decipher, but somehow understood in the hollow of my chest. A warning, perhaps, or a promise. I shouldn't have been there. No human ventured this far into the northern woods after sunset, especially not on the night of the blood moon. The elders in my village spoke of it in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously toward the tree line that marked the boundary between our world and theirs. But when your little sister is burning with fever, and the only medicine that works grows in the shadow of the ancient oak at the heart of the forbidden forest, you do foolish things, desperate things. The silver pendant my grandmother had pressed into my palm before she died hung heavy around my neck. "It won't protect you from them," she had whispered, her fingers cool against my wrist, "but it will remind you who you are when fear threatens to unmake you." I touched it now, drawing strength from the familiar ridges and curves of the crescent moon etched into its surface. A twig snapped somewhere to my left, and I froze. The forest fell eerily silent. No crickets, no nightbirds, nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat thudding against my ribs. I'd grown up hearing stories about them, the creatures who ruled these woods, the wolf shifters, stronger, faster, more lethal than any natural predator, and far more intelligent. "You're a long way from home, little human." The voice came from behind me, low and dangerous, with an edge that raised the fine hairs on my arms. I turned slowly, my fingers still clutching the pendant. He emerged from the shadows like he was made from them, tall and imposing, in human form, but nothing about him felt human. His eyes caught the moonlight filtering through the canopy, reflecting an unnatural amber glow. The Alpha. It had to be. No ordinary wolf would carry himself with such authority, such absolute certainty in his own power. "I need moonberry root," I said, forcing my voice not to tremble. "My sister is sick. I'll take what I need and leave. I won't trespass any longer than necessary." A muscle twitched in his jaw as he studied me. His dark hair fell across his forehead, partially obscuring eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed bravado. "You know what tonight is," he said. Not a question. I nodded. "The blood moon. And you came anyway." Again, not a question. There was something like curiosity in his expression now, mixed with something darker. "Do you have a death wish, human?" "Just a sick sister." I straightened my spine, though my legs felt like water beneath me. "The elders say your kind is dangerous even on ordinary nights, but I didn't have a choice." He moved closer, circling me with predatory grace. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the wild, untamed scent of him, pine and smoke and something primally animal. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew better. "You don't run from wolves. It only triggers the chase." "What's your name?" he demanded. "Evelyn," I answered, wishing my voice sounded stronger. "Evie." "Evelyn," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "Do you know who I am?" "The Alpha King," I whispered. Everyone in the surrounding villages knew of him, though few had seen him and lived to speak of it. They called him ruthless, merciless, a tyrant who tolerated no weakness, not even among his own kind. "Dominic," he said, surprising me. "Wolves never gave their true names to humans. Names held power, and you've wandered into my territory on the one night when I can't guarantee your safety, when none of us can fully control what we are." A howl rose in the distance, answered by another, then another, a chorus of eerie, haunting cries that seemed to pierce right through me. Dominic's head snapped toward the sound, and I saw something flicker across his features. Concern? Fear? It was gone before I could be sure. "They're changing already," he muttered, almost to himself. "The moon's pull is stronger this year." His gaze returned to me, sharper now, more intense. "You need to leave, now. I can't. Not without the moonberry root. My sister won't survive until morning." The words caught in my throat. "Please, I'll be quick." Another howl, closer this time. Dominic swore under his breath, the sound guttural and not entirely human. The ancient oak is surrounded by my pack by now. You'll never reach it alive. He stepped closer, looming over me. The blood moon makes us revert to our most primal state. We hunt. We kill. Even I cannot. He broke off, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. I saw it then, the battle raging within him, his shoulders tensed, muscles coiling beneath his simple black shirt. The moonlight caught his face at an angle that highlighted the sharpness of his features, the slight elongation of his canines. He wasn't fully transformed, but he wasn't entirely human either. I can't control myself, he warned, his voice dropping to a growl that resonated in the pit of my stomach. Not completely. Not tonight. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But something else bloomed alongside the fear. A strange, inexplicable feeling that I was exactly where I was meant to be, that this moment, this encounter, had been etched into my fate long before I took my first breath. Then help me, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. You know these woods. You know your pack. Help me get what I need, and I'll be gone before the moon reaches its zenith. His laugh was harsh, incredulous. You're asking the monster to protect you from the monsters? I'm asking the king to grant safe passage through his kingdom, I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. One night, that's all I ask. The howls were drawing closer. I could feel Dominic's internal struggle like a physical force between us, the human part of him warring with the beast, the alpha's sense of territory clashing with something else I couldn't name. If I take you to the oak, you become my responsibility, he finally said, each word deliberate and heavy with meaning. You understand? My pack won't touch you because you'll carry my scent, but that makes you mine. There was a weight to the word mine that sent a shiver through me, not entirely from fear. Until I leave the forest, I clarified. Just until then. The corner of his mouth lifted in a smile that was all predator. We'll see. Before I could respond, he moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between us. His hand cupped the back of my neck, firm but not painful, and he pulled me against his chest. I gasped as he lowered his face to the curve where my shoulder met my neck, inhaling deeply. What are you? Scent marking. He murmured against my skin, his breath hot. If you smell like me, they might hesitate before tearing out your throat. He released me just as abruptly, and I stumbled back, my heart racing so fast I thought it might burst from my chest. My skin tingled where his breath had touched it. Stay close, he ordered. Don't speak unless I tell you to. And whatever happens, whatever you see or hear, don't run. Running triggers the hunt. I nodded, still reeling from his proximity, from the strange intimacy of what had just happened. He turned and began walking deeper into the forest, his movements fluid and silent. I followed, acutely aware of every snap of twigs beneath my clumsy human feet, every rustle of leaves that seemed deafening in comparison to his ghost-like passage. The forest grew denser, the trees closing in around us like sentinels. Moonlight filtered through in patches, creating a dappled path of silver and shadow. I kept my eyes fixed on Dominic's broad shoulders, trying not to think about what might be watching us from the darkness beyond. Why help me? I finally whispered, unable to contain the question any longer. Why risk it? He didn't slow his pace or look back. I don't know, he admitted after a long pause. Perhaps I'm curious. Perhaps I'm bored. Or perhaps there's something about you that... He trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished. We walked in silence after that. The distance between the path I'd been following and the ancient oak much greater than I'd realized. The howls continued, sometimes fading, sometimes growing louder, as if the pack was moving in circles around us. They know I'm with you, Dominic said quietly. They're confused. My scent alongside a human's. It goes against everything they understand. Will they challenge you? I asked, fear curling in my stomach. His shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. Some might try. There are those who believe I've grown soft, too diplomatic with the human villages, too unwilling to expand our territory as our numbers grow. I thought of the rumors that had reached even my small village, whispers of dissent within the pack. of younger wolves who hungered for war, rather than the uneasy peace Dominic had maintained for years. "And have you?" I dared to ask. "Grown soft?" He stopped so suddenly I almost collided with his back. When he turned, his eyes had changed, the amber now rimmed with red, pupils elongated like a wolf's. "You'll know the answer to that if we encounter any challengers tonight," he said, his voice deeper, rougher. "Pray that we don't." The ancient oak appeared before us like a specter in the mist, its massive trunk gnarled and twisted with age. Roots erupted from the earth like the veins of some slumbering giant, and its branches reached toward the blood-red moon like supplicating arms. Beneath it, nestled between two prominent roots, I could see the distinctive silver-blue leaves of the moonberry plant. "There," I whispered, pointing. Dominic held out his arm, blocking my path. "We're not alone." I followed his gaze to the shadows beneath the oak's sprawling canopy. At first, I saw nothing. Then the shadows moved, separating from the darkness like ink taking form. 3 wolves, massive beyond anything I'd ever imagined, their coats gleaming silver and black in the moonlight. Their eyes glowed like embers in the night, fixed on us with predatory focus. "Stay behind me," Dominic ordered. "Don't speak. Don't move." He stepped forward, shoulders squared, chin raised. I watched in terrified fascination as his body language transformed, becoming more dominant, more aggressive. This was the alpha asserting his authority. A growl rumbled from his chest, deep and threatening. The wolves' ears flattened against their skulls, but they didn't retreat. The largest of them, a male with a silver streak running down his spine, took a step forward, lips curling back to reveal teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Vance," Dominic said, his voice carrying a warning. "Stand down." The silver-streaked wolf snarled, a sound that sent ice through my veins. Then, before my eyes, his form began to shift and change. Bones cracked and rearranged themselves. Fur receded, and within moments a man stood where the wolf had been, naked, wild-eyed, with the same silver streak in his otherwise dark hair. "You bring a human to our sacred place on the blood moon?" He spat, disgust evident in every syllable. "Have you completely lost your mind, Dominic?" "She needs moonberry root," Dominic replied, his tone level but undercut with authority. "Her sister is dying," Vance laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "And we should care because humans are prey, not pets. Or have you forgotten what you are?" The other 2 wolves growled their agreement, circling closer. "I haven't forgotten anything," Dominic said quietly. The calm in his voice was somehow more frightening than any show of anger would have been, including who leads this pack. "The girl is under my protection tonight. Anyone who touches her answers to me." Vance's eyes flicked to me, hatred burning in their depths. "Look at her. Weak. Fragile. Completely useless. Yet you risk dividing the pack for her?" His gaze returned to Dominic, narrowing. "Unless... Have you recognized her? Is that what this is about?" Something flickered across Dominic's features. Surprise, confusion. I couldn't be sure. "What are you talking about?" "The prophecy," Vance hissed. "The one the old seer spoke of before she died. A human girl with moonlight in her hair, who would either strengthen or destroy the pack." His eyes lingered on my pale blonde locks, visible in the moonlight. "Some might say she fits the description." I frowned, confusion momentarily overriding my fear. A prophecy? About a human girl? This was the first I'd heard of such a thing, and judging by the tension suddenly radiating from Dominic, it meant something significant. "Enough," Dominic growled. "I'm taking her to gather what she needs, and then I'm escorting her out of the forest. That's the end of it." Vance took another step forward. "The old ways say any human who enters our territory on the blood moon belongs to the pack, to be claimed or killed." A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. "If you won't enforce our laws, perhaps it's time for new leadership." The challenge hung in the air between them, heavy and dangerous. "Is that what you want, Vance?" Dominic asked softly. "To challenge me? Here? Now?" "The moon is high," Vance replied, gesturing toward the crimson orb that loomed overhead. What better time to determine who truly deserves to lead? The other two wolves shifted forms as well, becoming men. One young with a hungry look in his eyes, the other older with a jagged scar running down his chest. 3 against 1? I couldn't help but whisper, "That's not a fair challenge." Dominic's hand shot out, gripping my wrist in warning. "Stay out of this, Evelyn," he said, never taking his eyes off Vance. "The human speaks out of turn," the scarred man observed. "She needs to learn respect. She needs to be put in her place," the younger one added, eyes roving over me in a way that made my skin crawl. Dominic's grip tightened on my wrist, then slowly released. "Get your moonberry root," he said to me, his voice low. "I'll handle this." I hesitated, torn between the medicine my sister desperately needed and the knowledge that I was leaving Dominic to face 3 opponents alone. "Go," he insisted, giving me a gentle push toward the ancient oak. "Now." I moved cautiously toward the moonberry plant, keeping one eye on the confrontation unfolding behind me. Vance and his companions had spread out, forming a loose semicircle around Dominic. The tension in the air was palpable, crackling like electricity before a storm. As I knelt beside the moonberry plant, my trembling fingers struggling to dig around its roots, I heard Vance speak again, his voice dripping with disdain. "You've grown weak, Dominic, soft. First, you negotiate peace with the humans instead of expanding our territory as we should. Then you take in those half-breed orphans no other pack would touch. And now this, bringing a human girl into our midst on the sacred night." He spat on the ground. "My father should never have named you his successor. Your father recognized what you refused to see," Dominic replied evenly. "That strength isn't just about who has the sharpest teeth or the strongest bite. It's about wisdom, foresight, knowing when to fight and when to show mercy." "Mercy," Vance scoffed. "A human concept. We are wolves, Dominic, predators. At the top of the food chain, we don't show mercy. We show dominance. And that," Dominic said, "is why you will never be alpha." What happened next occurred so quickly I could barely follow it. Vance lunged, shifting midair into his wolf form. The other two followed suit, their human shapes blurring and reforming into massive, snarling beasts. Dominic met their charge not by shifting, but by dropping into a fighting stance, his movements precise and controlled. I watched in awe and terror as he fought them, somehow holding his own against 3 full-grown werewolves while remaining in human form. He was faster than should have been possible, stronger, more agile. He caught the youngest wolf by the scruff of his neck and hurled him into a tree with such force that the trunk cracked. The scarred wolf received a kick to the ribs that sent him tumbling end over end into the underbrush. But Vance was different, more skilled, more determined. His teeth caught Dominic's forearm, tearing through fabric and flesh. Dominic roared in pain, a sound that was far from human, and finally he too began to shift. The transformation was both beautiful and terrifying to witness. His body contorted, expanded, fur the color of midnight spreading across his skin. His face elongated into a muzzle filled with razor-sharp teeth, his hands becoming powerful paws tipped with claws that could disembowel with a single swipe. Within seconds, where Dominic had stood was now a wolf nearly twice the size of Vance, with eyes that burned like molten gold in the darkness. The two circled each other, growls rumbling from deep in their chests. Vance struck first, lunging for Dominic's throat. Dominic twisted away, then counterattacked with a ferocity that made me gasp. They became a blur of teeth and claws and fur, snarling and snapping, blood matting their coats where teeth had found purchase. I should have been using this distraction to finish gathering the moonberry root, to flee while I had the chance. Instead, I found myself frozen, unable to look away from the battle unfolding before me. There was something primal and awe-inspiring about it, something that spoke to a part of me I hadn't known existed until that moment. The scarred wolf and the young one had recovered and were circling back, preparing to join the fight once more. Without thinking, I grabbed a hefty branch that had fallen from the ancient oak, my hands closing around it like a makeshift club. I didn't know what I thought I was going to do with it. A human girl armed with a stick against two werewolves was laughable, but some instinct deeper than reason propelled me to my feet. The scarred wolf noticed me first, his head swiveling in my direction. His growl changed pitch, becoming more predatory, more focused. He began stalking toward me, his intent clear in every line of his body. The younger wolf followed his lead, both of them apparently deciding that I was easier prey than their embattled alpha. "Stay back," I warned, brandishing my pathetic branch. "I'm under the alpha's protection." The wolves paused, exchanging what almost looked like amused glances. Then the younger one crouched, muscles bunching as he prepared to spring. I backed up until my shoulders hit the trunk of the ancient oak. The rough bark dug into my back through my thin jacket, a reminder that there was nowhere left to run. My hand went instinctively to my grandmother's pendant, fingers closing around the cool silver. "Give me strength," I whispered, though whether to my grandmother's spirit or some unnamed higher power, I couldn't have said. As the wolf leapt, something strange happened. The pendant grew warm against my palm, then blazingly hot. A silvery light burst from between my fingers, expanding outward in a rippling wave. The young wolf collided with it mid-air and was thrown backward with a yelp of pain and surprise. The scarred wolf skidded to a halt, backing away with his ears flattened against his skull. I stared at my hand in shock. The pendant still glowed with an ethereal light. Symbols I'd never noticed before illuminated along its edge. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. "It won't protect you from them, but it will remind you who you are when fear threatens to unmake you." Had she known? All this time, had she known what the pendant could do? The fight between Dominic and Vance had paused, both wolves turning to witness the strange phenomenon. Vance's eyes widened, and a growl that sounded almost like fear rumbled from his chest. Dominic, however, seemed more intrigued than alarmed, his head tilting slightly as he studied me with those intelligent golden eyes. "What are you?" the scarred wolf demanded, having shifted back to human form, though he kept his distance. "What kind of magic is this?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, still staring at the pendant in wonder. It's never done this before." The young wolf had also returned to human form, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead where he'd struck the ground. "She's a witch," he snarled. "She has to be." "No," I shook my head. I'm just a girl from the village. My grandmother gave me this pendant before she died. That's all." Vance, still in wolf form, gave a bark that sounded suspiciously like laughter. He shifted back to human form, wiping blood from his chin with the back of his hand. "Not just a girl," he said, his earlier hostility now mixed with a reluctant sort of respect. "The girl. The one from the prophecy." He turned to Dominic. "You brought her here without even knowing what she is. The fates have a sense of humor, it seems." "What prophecy?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I expected. The pendant still glowed faintly against my palm, its warmth seeping into my skin like liquid courage. "What are you talking about?" Vance and Dominic exchanged a look loaded with unspoken meaning. It was Dominic who finally spoke, his voice slightly roughened from the shift back to human form. "There's a prophecy passed down through generations of alpha bloodlines," he explained, approaching me cautiously. "About a human woman with hair like moonlight who would come to us during a blood moon. She would either save the pack from destruction or lead us to it." His eyes traveled to my pendant, now dimming as my fear subsided. The prophecy mentioned she would carry an ancient symbol of power. I looked down at the crescent moon etched into the silver. "This? But it's just a family heirloom. My grandmother—" "Your grandmother," Dominic interrupted gently. "What was her name?" "Eleanor," I said. "Eleanor Reed." The effect of the name was immediate and shocking. The scarred wolf swore under his breath. The young one took a step backward, and even Vance seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Dominic's expression shifted through surprise, then understanding, then something that looked almost like awe. "Eleanor Reed," he repeated. "She disappeared from the northern village 50 years ago. She was said to have married a human, against all pack law." He studied my face intently. "You're her granddaughter. You carry her blood. Wolf blood. Diluted, but still there." I shook my head, disbelieving. "That's impossible. My grandmother was human. My whole family is human." "Are they?" Dominic challenged softly. Have you never wondered why you feel different? Why the forest calls to you when others fear it? Why you're brave enough or foolish enough to venture into wolf territory on the blood moon? I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off as absurd, but something deep within me recognized the truth in his words. I'd always felt a connection to the forest, a restlessness during full moons, a wildness my parents could never understand. As a child, I'd sometimes woken from dreams where I ran on 4 legs instead of 2, the scent of pine and earth and prey filling my nostrils. I can't be, I stammered. Not a full wolf, Dominic agreed. Maybe not even enough to shift, but enough to activate that pendant. Enough to fulfill the prophecy, perhaps. Vance made a scoffing sound. Or she could be our destruction, if you recall the rest of the prophecy. She will bridge 2 worlds or burn them both. Are you willing to risk our entire pack on the slim chance she's our salvation rather than our doom? I clutched the moonberry root I'd managed to gather, suddenly remembering why I was there in the first place. I didn't come here for prophecies or pack politics, I said firmly. I came for this, to save my sister. I need to go back. It's not that simple anymore, Evelyn, Dominic said, his voice gentle but unyielding. You've activated an ancient magic in the heart of our territory. You've been recognized as a descendant of a pack member. Under our laws, that makes you part of the pack, whether you want to be or not. But my sister will be taken care of, he promised. I'll send one of my most trusted pack members to deliver the root and explain your absence. Fear clutched at my heart. Explain my absence? You mean I can't go home? Ever? Dominic hesitated. Not tonight, certainly. The blood moon isn't over, and with what's happened here, news will spread quickly through the pack. Some will welcome you. Others. His gaze flicked to Vance. Others will see you as a threat to be eliminated before you can fulfill the darker possibility of the prophecy. Vance inclined his head, acknowledging the truth of this. I won't lie and say I welcome this development, he said. But I'm not foolish enough to ignore the old magic when it manifests before my eyes. The girl stays alive, for now. Under watch, under protection, Dominic corrected, a warning in his tone. The young wolf who had attacked me was shifting nervously from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. What about the challenge? He asked. It wasn't resolved. Wasn't it? Dominic raised an eyebrow, turning to Vance. Do you still wish to continue? There was a long, tense moment of silence. Finally, Vance shook his head. Not tonight. The appearance of the prophesied one changes things. The pack needs unity now more than dissent. His eyes narrowed. But don't mistake this for submission, Dominic. I still believe your leadership has grown too soft, too human-friendly. When this prophecy business is resolved, we'll revisit the challenge. Dominic nodded, accepting this temporary truce. Take Seth and return to the main pack, he ordered, gesturing to the young wolf. Tell them what's happened. Make sure they understand the girl is under my personal protection. Vance and Seth exchanged glances, then nodded reluctantly. They shifted back to wolf form, their human silhouettes stretching and contorting in that unnerving way, before they bounded off into the darkness of the forest. The scarred wolf remained, his stance wary but no longer overtly threatening. What about me? He asked. Julian, Dominic addressed him. Take the moonberry route to the village. Find the girl with the fever, Evelyn's sister. Mina, I supplied, my voice catching. Her name is Mina Reed. Our cottage is the last one on the eastern edge of the village, with the blue door. Julian looked less than pleased with this assignment. You want me to walk into a human village? On the blood moon? You have the most control over your shift, Dominic replied. And you once trained as a healer before choosing the warrior's path. You'll know how to prepare the route properly. His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Julian sighed heavily but held out his hand for the moonberry root. I hesitated, everything in me reluctant to part with the thing I'd risked so much to obtain. He'll help her, Dominic said softly, reading my conflict. Julian was born on a blood moon. He has mastery over the beast even on nights like this. And he owes me a debt. The scarred wolf grimaced at this, but didn't deny it. I'll see to your sister, he promised gruffly. The root will bring her fever down by morning. With trembling fingers, I placed the precious herbs in his outstretched hand. Thank you, I whispered. Julian nodded once, then shifted and disappeared into the trees, the moonberry clutched carefully in his jaws. Alone with Dominic at last, I felt the full weight of everything that had happened crashing down on me. My legs wobbled, and I sank onto one of the ancient oak's sprawling roots, exhaustion and shock catching up all at once. What happens now? I asked, my voice small in the vast silence of the forest. Dominic crouched before me, bringing his eyes level with mine. This close, I could see flecks of green amidst the amber, and something in them, a warmth, a depth, that belied his fearsome reputation. Now, he said, I take you to my home. You'll be safe there while we figure out what this all means. Your home? I repeated. He smiled slightly. Did you think we lived in caves and dens? The pack has a settlement deeper in the forest. Houses, gardens, children playing. It's not so different from your village in many ways. The idea was startling. Werewolves with homes and gardens. A community hidden away in the heart of the forest. The stories told in my village had never mentioned such things. We'd been taught to fear them as little more than beasts. Why would you help me? I asked, echoing my question from earlier, when this night's journey had seemed so much simpler. Even before you knew about the prophecy or my grandmother, you chose to help me. Why? Dominic was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. I don't know, he admitted finally. Something about you called to me, a familiarity I couldn't place. He reached out slowly, as if giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of pale hair behind my ear. Perhaps, on some level, the wolf in me recognized the wolf in you. The touch sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. I found myself leaning slightly into his hand, before I caught myself and straightened. Can I ever go home? I asked, the question that weighed heaviest on my heart. His expression sobered. I don't know, Evelyn. The activation of the pendant, the revelation of your heritage, these things have set events in motion that can't be undone. But I promise you this. I will do everything in my power to keep you safe while we discover what role you're meant to play. It wasn't the reassurance I'd hoped for, but there was a sincerity in his voice that I found myself trusting despite everything. I nodded and rose to my feet, swaying slightly with fatigue. It's a long walk to the settlement, Dominic said, eyeing my exhaustion. And the night grows cold. Before I could respond, he began to remove his shirt. I felt heat rise to my cheeks and quickly averted my eyes. What are you doing? I asked, staring fixedly at the ground. He chuckled, a warm, rich sound that seemed to vibrate through the air between us. Not what you're thinking, little wolf. I'm going to shift again. It will be faster if you ride on my back, and my fur will keep you warm. I looked up in time to see his knowing smile before his features began to change once more. The transformation seemed smoother this time, more controlled. Within moments, the magnificent black wolf stood before me, golden eyes regarding me with what almost looked like amusement. He padded forward and lowered himself to the ground, clearly inviting me to climb onto his back. I hesitated, the strangeness of the situation suddenly overwhelming. A few hours ago, I'd been a simple village girl on a desperate mission to save my sister. Now I was apparently part werewolf, the subject of an ancient prophecy, and about to ride through the forest on the back of the Alpha King. This is insane, I muttered, but found myself cautiously approaching him nonetheless. His fur was surprisingly soft beneath my fingers as I tentatively stroked his massive shoulder. He made a rumbling sound deep in his chest that I somehow understood wasn't threatening, but encouraging. Taking a deep breath, I swung my leg over his back and settled myself between his shoulder blades, my hands burying themselves in the thick ruff around his neck. Dominic rose carefully, adjusting to my weight. Then, with a soft woof that seemed to ask if I was ready, he began to move. What started as a walk quickly became a loping run, the forest flying past us in a blur of shadow and moonlight. I clung to him, my face pressed against his fur, inhaling that wild scent that was becoming oddly comforting. The pendant around my neck grew warm again, not blazing as before, but a gentle heat that spread through my chest and limbs, easing my fear and filling me with a strange sense of rightness. As we raced beneath the crimson light of the blood moon, carried by the strength and speed of the Alpha King, I felt something unfurling inside me, something wild and ancient that had slumbered in my blood for generations, something that recognized this forest as home, these stars as guides, this magnificent creature beneath me as kin. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. The settlement appeared gradually, first a few scattered lights through the trees, then the outlines of structures built seamlessly into the natural landscape. Unlike the cramped, angular buildings of my village, these homes seemed to grow from the forest itself, with living trees incorporated into their design, roofs planted with moss and wildflowers, walls adorned with intricate carvings of wolves and moons and ancient symbols. Dominic slowed as we approached, giving me time to absorb the sight. Pack members emerged from homes and gathering spaces, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to open hostility. I fought the urge to shrink against Dominic's fur, instead forcing myself to sit straighter, to meet their gazes with whatever courage I could muster. He came to a stop in what appeared to be a central clearing, where a large fire burned within a circle of stones. The pack gathered around us, murmurs rippling through the crowd. I recognized the tension in their postures, the wariness in their eyes. To them, I was an intruder, a potential threat, or perhaps, I realized as the pendant warmed against my skin, a potential savior. Dominic lowered himself to the ground, allowing me to slide from his back. The moment my feet touched the earth, the murmuring around us intensified. I stood beside him, painfully aware of how small and human I appeared next to his massive wolf form. He shifted back to human shape with that same unsettling fluidity, and someone hurried forward with clothing for him. A simple tunic and pants that he donned quickly. The respect in the pack members' eyes as they handed him the garments was unmistakable, mingled with curiosity as their gaze flickered to me. "Gather the pack council," Dominic instructed, "and prepare the guest quarters in my home. The human girl stays with us tonight." A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was striking, with sharp features and hair the color of autumn leaves pulled back in a complex braid. Her eyes, a startling green, assessed me with calculating precision. "This is the one Vance spoke of?" she asked, her voice carrying an authority that suggested she held rank within the pack. "The prophecy child? This is Evelyn Reed," Dominic replied, "granddaughter of Eleanor Reed." The name rippled through the gathering like a stone dropped in still water. The woman's eyebrows shot up, and she took a closer look at me, her gaze lingering on my pale hair. "I see the resemblance now," she said softly. "The same eyes, the same stubborn set to the jaw." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "I knew Eleanor when I was very young, before she left." "You knew my grandmother?" I asked, stepping forward eagerly. "Truly?" "She was the Alpha's sister," the woman explained. "Dominic's aunt, though he never met her. She disappeared before he was born." Her eyes softened as she looked at me. "My name is Freya. I'm the pack healer now, as your grandmother was in her time." The revelations kept coming, each one more dizzying than the last. Dominic and I were related. My grandmother had been a healer to werewolves. It seemed impossible, yet the pendant warm against my skin seemed to hum with confirmation. "Come," Freya said, extending her hand to me. "You must be exhausted. Let me show you where you can rest while the council convenes." I hesitated, glancing at Dominic. Despite the madness of the situation, he had become my anchor in this strange new world, the one familiar element in a night that had upended everything I thought I knew. "Go with Freya," he said gently. "She'll see to your comfort. I need to speak with the council about what's happened and what it means." His eyes held mine. "I'll come for you afterward. We have much to discuss." The promise in his words sent an inexplicable thrill through me. I nodded and allowed Freya to lead me away from the gathered pack, feeling their eyes following me as we crossed the clearing. Dominic's home was larger than the others, situated on a small rise that overlooked the settlement. Like all the dwellings, it blended harmoniously with the forest, stone and living wood, and earth melded together to create something that felt ancient and alive. Inside, it was unexpectedly warm and welcoming, with rich furs covering the floors, intricate tapestries depicting wolf legends adorning the walls, and a hearth where a fire crackled merrily. "The Alpha's quarters," Freya explained, leading me through the main space. "Your chambers will be through here." She opened a door to reveal a small but comfortable room with a bed piled high with furs, a basin of steaming water for washing, and a window that looked out over the moonlit forest. "It's beautiful," I said softly, running my fingers over a carved wooden chest at the foot of the bed. Freya watched me with that same calculating gaze. "You don't seem as frightened as you should be," she observed. Most humans would be hysterical by now. I considered this. The night's events should have left me paralyzed with terror, surrounded by werewolves, unable to return home, thrust into the center of a prophecy I didn't understand. Yet beneath the fear and confusion was a sense of discovery, as if I'd stumbled upon a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. "I think," I said slowly, "that part of me has been waiting for this my whole life without knowing it. Ever since I was a child, I've felt different, out of place, like I was meant for something else." I touched the pendant at my neck. "Maybe this is it." Freya's expression softened. "You are very like her." Eleanor had that same quiet strength, that same acceptance of the extraordinary. She gestured to the basin. "Wash and rest. There are clean clothes in the chest. I'll bring you something to eat." When she had gone, I sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the night finally catching up to me. I shed my dirt-stained jacket and boots, then moved to the basin to splash the warm water on my face. The girl who stared back at me from the water's rippling surface looked different somehow, her eyes a little wilder, her features a little sharper in the dim light. Or perhaps it was simply that I was seeing myself clearly for the first time. I changed into the clothes Freya had mentioned, soft leggings and a loose tunic that smelled faintly of pine and wood smoke. They were simple, but well made, comfortable against my skin in a way the rough-spun fabrics of my village never were. Freya returned with a tray of food. Bread still warm from baking, roasted meat that made my mouth water, and berries glistening like jewels. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the aroma hit me. I ate ravenously, surprising myself with my appetite. "Your body is changing," Freya noted, watching me with knowing eyes. "The wolf blood awakening responds to hunger first, then enhanced senses, then the dreams." I paused mid-bite. Dreams. Of running beneath the moon, of the hunt, of pack. She tilted her head. "You've had them already, haven't you?" I nodded slowly. "Since I was a child, I thought they were just dreams." Freya's smile was sad. Eleanor made a choice to suppress her nature, to live as a human. She must have known what it would mean for her descendants, caught between worlds, never fully belonging to either. She reached out and touched the pendant. "She gave you this to protect you, but also to connect you to your heritage when the time was right." A knock at the door interrupted us. Freya opened it to reveal Dominic, his expression grave. "The council is divided," he said without preamble. "Half believe Evelyn's arrival fulfills the prophecy's promise of salvation. The other half fear she'll bring destruction." His eyes met mine. "They want proof one way or the other." "What kind of proof?" I asked, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "The trial of moon and blood," Freya answered before Dominic could. Her voice hushed. "It's an ancient rite, rarely performed. It will reveal whether your presence strengthens or weakens the pack bonds." "And if it shows I weaken them?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Dominic's jaw tightened. "Then according to pack law, you must leave our territory and never return. Or..." He broke off. "Or face execution," Freya finished softly. The food turned to ash in my mouth. "When would this trial take place?" "Tomorrow night," Dominic said. "When the blood moon reaches its peak for the second night." He stepped closer, his presence filling the small room. "I tried to buy more time, Evelyn. The council wouldn't budge. With Vance spreading word of the prophecy, the pack is on edge. They demand certainty." "What does this trial involve?" I asked, setting aside the tray of half-eaten food. "You'll enter the sacred grove at the heart of our territory," Freya explained. "There, you'll be asked to shed blood onto an ancient stone that responds to pack magic. If the stone accepts your blood and glows with the pack light, you are one of us, a strength to our bonds. If it rejects your blood, she trailed off. Then I'm the destruction the prophecy warned of. I finished grimly. Dominic made a frustrated sound and paced the small confines of the room. It's archaic nonsense. You're Eleanor's granddaughter. The pendant responded to you. That should be enough. For you, perhaps, Freya said gently. Not for those who fear change, who cling to the old ways. She turned to me. Rest now. I'll come for you in the morning. There are things you should know before the trial, preparations to be made. She slipped out, leaving me alone with Dominic. He stood by the window, moonlight silvering his profile, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. I'm sorry, he said after a long moment. This isn't what I intended when I brought you here. What did you intend? I asked, genuinely curious. He turned, his eyes finding mine in the dim light. I don't know, he admitted. When I found you in the forest, something in me recognized something in you. I couldn't let you face the dangers of the blood moon alone. A rueful smile touched his lips. I didn't expect ancient prophecies and pack trials. I found myself moving closer to him, drawn by some inexplicable pull. Why did my grandmother leave? I asked. If she was the Alpha's sister, part of the pack's highest bloodline, why choose a human life? Dominic's expression grew distant. The stories say she fell in love with a human man. Such unions were forbidden then, punishable by death. My grandfather, the Alpha at that time, gave her a choice. Renounce the human or leave the pack forever. She chose exile. For love, I murmured. For love, he echoed, his gaze returning to me with an intensity that made my breath catch. The one force even pack bonds sometimes can't withstand. Something shifted in the air between us, a current of awareness that hadn't been there before. Or perhaps it had been there all along, unacknowledged beneath the fear and chaos of the night. You should rest, he said, his voice rougher than before. Tomorrow will be challenging. Yet he made no move to leave, and I found myself unwilling to send him away. We stood there, inches apart, the silence stretching between us filled with unspoken possibilities. I'm afraid, I confessed, the words barely audible. His hand rose to cup my cheek, the touch gentle but searing. I know, he said, but you're stronger than you realize, Evelyn Reed. I saw it the moment you stood your ground in the forest, a human girl facing down the Alpha King without flinching. I was terrified, I corrected with a shaky laugh. Yet you didn't run. His thumb traced the curve of my cheekbone. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's facing that fear, and moving forward anyway. I leaned into his touch, my eyelids growing heavy with exhaustion and the comfort of his presence. Will you stay? I asked, the question slipping out before I could reconsider. Just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone in this strange place. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, then warmth, then a deeper emotion I couldn't name. I'll stay, he promised. I crawled beneath the furs on the bed, their weight a comforting cocoon against the night's chill. Dominic settled in a chair nearby, his presence a reassuring anchor as my consciousness began to drift. On the edge of sleep, I thought I felt fingers gently brushing hair from my forehead, heard a voice murmuring, "Sleep well, little wolf, I won't let them harm you," but I couldn't be sure if it was real or the beginning of a dream. I woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sounds of the pack settlement coming to life outside. For a disoriented moment, I thought I was home in my village, that the previous night had been an elaborate dream. Then I felt the pendant warm against my skin, saw the unfamiliar room with its carved wooden furnishings and wolf tapestries, and remembered everything. Dominic was gone, the chair where he'd sat empty, but a fresh set of clothes had been laid out for me, and a small breakfast tray waited on the chest at the foot of the bed. I dressed quickly in the provided garments, leggings again, but this time with a tunic of soft, dyed leather adorned with subtle embroidery. Pack clothing, I realized. I was being presented as one of them. The thought should have disturbed me, but instead, I found myself running appreciative fingers over the fine stitching, admiring how the garments fit as if made for me. Perhaps they had been, Perhaps Freya or one of the other pack women had worked through the night to outfit the prophecy child appropriately. A soft knock at the door announced Freya's arrival. She entered with a basket over her arm, her expression serious but kind. "You slept well?" she asked, setting the basket on a small table. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "No dreams of running or hunting?" "Those will come," she said with certainty, "now that the wolf blood has been awakened." She began unpacking her basket, revealing various herbs, small bottles, and a mortar and pestle. "We have work to do before tonight." "What kind of work?" "Preparation for the trial. Your grandmother was pack healer before me. She would have taught you these things had circumstances been different." Freya gestured for me to sit beside her. "The trial of Moon and Blood isn't just about lineage. It's about intent, about the heart's true nature. We must prepare your body and spirit to reveal that truth without fear or hesitation." She handed me a small cup of tea brewed from herbs I didn't recognize. It tasted bitter, but not unpleasant, warming me from the inside with a peculiar tingling sensation. "To sharpen your senses," she explained. "The wolf parts of you are stirring, but they've been dormant for too long. This will help them wake." As I sipped the tea, she began grinding various herbs in the mortar, the aroma filling the room with an earthy, primal scent that seemed to bypass my conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper, more instinctual. "Where is Dominic?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Freya's knowing smile told me I hadn't succeeded. The Alpha has many responsibilities, especially on a day like today. The second night of the blood moon is traditionally a time for pack bonding, for renewing oaths of loyalty. Your trial has added complications to those traditions. "Because half the pack thinks I'll destroy them," I said flatly. "Because change is frightening," she corrected gently. "And you, Evelyn Reed, represent change of the most fundamental kind, a bridge between worlds that have been separate for generations." The day passed in a blur of preparations. Freya taught me the basics of pack ritual, coached me on the proper responses during the trial, and continued administering herbs and tinctures meant to awaken my dormant wolf heritage. By late afternoon, I could detect scents I'd never noticed before. The distinct smell of each pack member who passed by the house, the game being prepared for the evening feast. The subtle changes in the air that signaled the coming sunset. "Your eyes," Freya remarked, studying my face as the light began to fade. "They've changed." I moved to a polished metal mirror hanging on the wall and gasped softly at my reflection. My eyes, normally a clear blue, now held flecks of amber around the pupil, wolf eyes beginning to emerge from human ones. "Is this permanent?" I asked, touching my face in wonder. "That depends on you," Freya replied, "on the choices you make after the trial. If you embrace the wolf blood, more changes will follow. If you reject it," she shrugged. "The eyes are always the first to change and the first to revert." A knock interrupted us, and the door opened to reveal Dominic. He wore ceremonial attire, dark leather pants, an intricately tooled vest over a simple shirt, and around his neck, a medallion bearing the same crescent moon symbol as my pendant. His eyes immediately found mine, widening slightly as he noticed the change. "It's time," he said softly. I rose on legs that suddenly felt unsteady, my heart hammering against my ribs. Freya draped a cloak around my shoulders, deep blue like the night sky, embroidered with silver stars that caught the fading light. "Eleanor's," she explained. It seemed fitting. The weight of the garment settled around me like an embrace from the grandmother I'd never truly known. I drew strength from it, from the knowledge that she had once walked this same path between worlds. Outside, the settlement had transformed. Torches lined the paths, their flames dancing in the twilight. Pack members dressed in their finest gathered in small groups, their conversations hushing as I emerged with Dominic and Freya. The divide among them was palpable. Some nodded respectfully, or offered small smiles of encouragement, while others watched with suspicion or outright hostility. Vance stood with a group of the latter, his silver-streaked hair gleaming in the torchlight. His gaze tracked our progress across the clearing, calculating and cold. Beside him was the young wolf, Seth, and several others who bore the same distrustful expressions. "They're afraid," Dominic murmured, following my gaze. "Fear makes wolves dangerous. Remember that tonight." We walked in solemn procession through the settlement and into the forest beyond, following a path marked by stones painted with luminescent symbols that glowed faintly in the gathering darkness. The blood moon was rising, its crimson light filtering through the trees, bathing everything in an otherworldly red glow. The sacred grove appeared suddenly, a perfect circle of ancient trees surrounding a small clearing. At its center stood a stone altar, weathered by centuries of wind and rain, carved with symbols similar to those on my pendant. The pack arranged themselves around the perimeter of the clearing, forming an unbroken circle of witnesses. Freya led me to the altar, while Dominic took his place at the head of the circle. As Alpha, he would oversee the trial, but could not interfere with its outcome. The knowledge that even he was bound by pack law in this moment sent a chill down my spine. "Brothers and sisters of the moon," Dominic's voice rang out, powerful and commanding. "We gather on this sacred night, beneath the blood moon's watchful eye, to witness the trial of moon and blood. Before us stands Evelyn Reed, granddaughter of Eleanor Reed, born of our bloodline but raised among humans. The ancient prophecy speaks of one such as she, a bridge between worlds who will either strengthen our pack or lead it to ruin." Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves, quickly silenced by Dominic's raised hand. "Tonight, the stones of our ancestors will judge what we cannot, whether her blood and heart are true to the pack, whether her presence among us fulfills the prophecy's promise or its warning." His eyes met mine across the clearing, steady and reassuring. "Let the trial begin." Freya stepped forward, producing a small silver knife from the folds of her robe. "The trial requires blood freely given," she explained. "A drop upon the sacred stone will reveal the truth of your nature." I extended my hand, palm up, trying to keep it steady. Freya's touch was gentle as she took my wrist, the knife glinting red in the moonlight as she brought it to my skin. The cut was swift and shallow, but I gasped at the unexpected sting. Blood welled in my palm, startlingly bright. "Place your hand on the stone," Freya instructed. "Palm down, blood to stone. And speak the words I taught you." I moved to the ancient altar, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes upon me. The stone seemed to pulse with an energy of its own, ancient and knowing. I pressed my bleeding palm against its rough surface and spoke the words Freya had taught me that afternoon. "Blood of my blood, moon of my moon, I come before the pack with an open heart. Judge me true, judge me worthy, or send me from this place forever." For a breathless moment, nothing happened. My blood trickled over the stone, seemingly absorbed by the porous surface. Whispers began at the edges of the circle. Disappointment from some, vindication from others. Then, just as despair began to settle over me, a faint glow appeared beneath my hand. It spread outward like ripples in a pond, illuminating the carved symbols one by one until the entire altar blazed with silver light. The light continued to spread, flowing along channels in the ground I hadn't noticed before, connecting to each of the painted stones that had marked our path, creating a glowing network throughout the grove. Gasps and exclamations erupted from the pack. I lifted my hand from the stone, staring in wonder at the pulsing light that seemed to beat in rhythm with my heart. "The stone accepts her," Freya announced, her voice ringing with triumph. "The blood of the pack flows in her veins. The prophecy speaks truth. She is the bridge, the one who strengthens us." Relief washed over me, so powerful I thought my legs might give way. But before celebration could truly take hold, a shout rang out from the circle. "This proves nothing!" Vance pushed his way forward, his face contorted with anger. "The stone responds to blood of the pack, yes. But what of her loyalty? What of her heart? Will she stand with us when the hunters come? Will she choose pack over human when the choice must be made?" Murmurs of agreement rose from his supporters. Dominic stepped forward, his posture tense with barely contained fury. "The trial has spoken, Vance. By our laws, by our traditions, she is acknowledged as pack." "Then let her prove it," Vance challenged. "The second part of the prophecy speaks of a choice, a moment when the bridge must decide which world she truly belongs to." His gaze swept the circle, gathering support. "I say we create that moment now." Before anyone could react, he gestured sharply, and two of his supporters dragged someone forward from the shadows beyond the grove. A human man, bound and gagged, terror evident in his wide eyes. With a shock of horror, I recognized him. Thomas, from my village, a kind young man who had often helped my family with heavy tasks, who had once asked to court me before I'd gently declined. A hunting party found this human trespassing on our lands, Vance announced. Seeking the girl, no doubt. By our laws, his life is forfeit. Vance! Dominic snarled, stepping forward. This is not how we— Let the prophecy child decide his fate, Vance interrupted. If she is truly one of us, she'll acknowledge pack law and accept that humans who trespass must pay the price, if her loyalty still lies with them. He left the implication hanging in the air. The pack had gone deadly silent, all eyes now shifting between Vance, Dominic, and me. I stared at Thomas, saw the confusion and fear in his eyes as he looked back at me in my strange clothes, standing amidst the werewolves as if I belonged there. This is wrong, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. He came looking for me. The punishment should be mine, not his. So you choose humans over pack? Vance pressed, triumphant. I choose compassion, I countered, which my grandmother taught me is the true strength of the wolf, not cruelty. Not fear. I turned to face the pack, drawing on a courage I hadn't known I possessed. The prophecy speaks of a bridge between worlds. A bridge doesn't destroy what stands on either side. It connects them, makes them stronger through unity. I took a step toward Thomas, then another, my eyes never leaving Vance's. Release him. Let him return to the village with a message of peace. Let this be the beginning of the bridge, not another stone in the wall between our kinds. For a tense moment, I thought Vance would refuse, would order his followers to attack. But a new voice spoke from the circle. The girl speaks wisdom. Julian, the scarred wolf who had taken the moonberry route to my sister, pushed through to stand beside me. I visited her village last night as the Alpha commanded. I saw humans who feared us, yes, but also those who showed kindness to a stranger. Her sister. He glanced at me. Your sister recognized what I was, yet still offered me food and shelter for the night. She said any friend of her sister's was welcome in their home. Surprise and gratitude flooded through me at his words. Mina had survived, was well enough to extend hospitality, even to a werewolf, and Julian had stood up for me when it mattered most. Others began to speak up from around the circle. Wolves who had had positive encounters with humans, who questioned the wisdom of continued isolation and hostility. The tide of opinion was turning, slowly, but perceptibly. Dominic seized the moment. Cut his bonds, he ordered. And when Vance hesitated, added with steel in his voice, Now, Vance. Or face challenge for disobeying your alpha. With visible reluctance, Vance nodded to his supporters. They sliced through Thomas's restraints, though they didn't remove his gag. Evelyn will return him to the border of our territory, Dominic continued. Alone. As a show of trust, and when she returns, his gaze met mine, we will begin discussing how this bridge between our worlds might be built. Vance's jaw clenched, but he stepped back, acknowledging defeat for now. This isn't over, he warned softly as I passed him to reach Thomas. I know, I replied just as quietly. Change never comes easily, but it comes all the same. I gently removed Thomas's gag and helped him to his feet. He stared at me as if I were a stranger, confusion and hurt evident in his expression. Evie, what's happening? These people, I'll explain everything on the way, I promised, leading him toward the edge of the grove. But you're safe now. I'm taking you home. Dominic approached us, his presence causing Thomas to shrink back in fear. Take this, he said, handing me a small knife. For protection. And this. He pressed something else into my palm. To remind you of your promise to return. I looked down to see a carved wooden wolf, small enough to fit in my palm, detailed enough to capture the fierce intelligence in its eyes, a token, a reminder, a promise. I will come back, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. Something passed between us in that moment, an understanding, a connection that transcended words. He nodded once, then stepped back, allowing us to pass. The journey to the border was long and filled with Thomas's questions, his disbelief gradually giving way to wonder as I explained my grandmother's heritage, the prophecy, the awakening of my own dormant wolf blood. I omitted certain details, the intensity of my connection to Dominic, the way my heart seemed torn between the village of my childhood and the pack that called to something primal within me. When we reached the edge of werewolf territory, Thomas turned to me, his expression troubled. "You're coming back to the village, right? This is just temporary?" I touched the wooden wolf in my pocket, felt the pendant warm against my skin. "I don't know, Thomas. I belong to both worlds now. I need to understand what that means." "But your family, Mina, tell them I'm safe," I said. "Tell them I've found a part of myself I never knew was missing. And tell them—" I hesitated, then continued with certainty. "Tell them I'll be the bridge, between humans and wolves, between fear and understanding. I'll find a way for us to coexist in peace." He searched my face, perhaps looking for the girl he had known. But she was gone, transformed by a night under the blood moon and the awakening of heritage too long denied. "You've changed," he said simply. I smiled, feeling the slight sharpness of elongated canines against my lower lip. "I've become who I was always meant to be." As Thomas disappeared into the familiar terrain beyond the border, heading for the lights of the village visible in the distance, I turned back toward the heart of the forest, toward the pack, toward Dominic. He was waiting for me at the edge of the trees, as if he'd known exactly when I would return. His silhouette was outlined by the blood moon hanging low in the sky behind him, his eyes gleaming with amber fire in the darkness. "You came back," he said as I approached, relief evident in his voice despite his attempt to hide it. "I made a promise," I reminded him, pulling the wooden wolf from my pocket, "and I meant what I said about building a bridge. It won't be easy. There will be resistance from both sides." "Nothing worthwhile ever comes easily," he replied, his hand reaching for mine in the darkness. "But you've already begun to change hearts and minds. Even Vance will come around eventually." His fingers twined with mine, warm and strong, the touch sending a current of awareness through my entire body. The wolf in me recognized the wolf in him. Alpha, protector, potential mate. The thought should have startled me, but instead it felt right, inevitable. "The prophecy said I would either save the pack or destroy it," I mused as we walked together toward the settlement, hand in hand. "But perhaps it meant I would destroy the old ways to make room for something new, something better." Dominic smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern features. "A bridge between worlds," he said, "built by the girl with moonlight in her hair and the courage of both wolf and human in her heart." As we reached the edge of the settlement, I could see the pack gathered in the central clearing. They watched our approach, their expressions ranging from curiosity to acceptance to lingering suspicion. But what mattered most was that they were waiting, willing to take the first steps on this new path with us. I touched my grandmother's pendant, feeling its familiar warmth. "Thank you," I whispered. A message meant for her spirit wherever it might be, for the strength to embrace both worlds. Dominic's hand tightened around mine as we walked into the clearing together. Alpha and bridge builder, wolf and human, past and future merging into a present full of possibilities. The blood moon shone overhead, no longer a harbinger of danger but a witness to transformation, both mine and the pack's. I had entered the forest as a desperate village girl seeking medicine for her sister. I returned to the pack settlement as something new, something unprecedented, the living bridge between two worlds that had been separate for too long. And as Dominic drew me into the circle of firelight, as the pack gathered around us with cautious hope in their eyes, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I had finally found where I belonged, not solely in the human world or the wolf one, but in the space between, creating a path for others to follow. "Welcome home, little wolf," Dominic murmured, his voice for my ears alone, and for the first time in my life, I truly was.